Okay, guys, welcome back to part two. Now we're going to start looking at those word problems, okay? So word problems are kind of tricky. It's really one of those things you have to really focus your attention on what you're reading. Because if you just read it and you're not really paying attention to what you're reading, it becomes a lot harder. So let's try to dissect what's happening, and then we'll come up with an equation and a solution for it. So our first example, which has already kind of worked out for us, but let me kind of talk you through your process of thinking here. So in 1963, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. began his famous I Have a Dream speech with the words, 50 years ago, a great American whose symbolic shadow we stand signed the Emancipation Proclamation. The proclamation was signed by President Abraham Lincoln in 1863. But how long is the score? We can use algebra to find the answer. So in this problem, we see that Martin Luther King Jr. is giving his speech in 1963. Now, he starts his speech by saying 50 years ago. Now, we don't know how long that is because a lot of us don't know what a score is. So 50 years ago, well, how many years is that really? That's the question. How many years is 50 years ago? Well, we know the answer because later in the problem, it says that that speech that he's referring to from Abraham Lincoln, that speech was given in 1863. So let me see all that. Okay. So Martin Luther King Jr. is giving this speech in 1963. He says 50 years ago. And 50 years ago was in 1863. So we have to do a little bit of math here. We have to realize, hey, how many years has it been? If it's 1963 now when Martin Luther King Jr. is giving the speech, and he's talking about something that happened in 1863, how many years ago was that? So that's what they're doing first here. 1963 minus 1863, that is 100 years. But remember, 100 years, that's how long 50 years ago was. Okay, so if we have 50 years ago is the same thing as 100 years ago, well, now we can figure out what a score is. So that's exactly what this equation is saying. They use S to represent score. 5 scores is equal to 100 years. So by simply following the same rules that we used earlier, remember that's 5 times S. So the opposite of multiplying by 5 is dividing. That's why you can see they're dividing 5 on both sides. Remember, the division property of equality, they do it once on the left, they have to do it once on the right. You have to do it to both sides. So you solve the equation, and you end up with a score equaling 20 years. Okay? Remember, it's all about trying to equate two things. We did the math. We said, hey, you know what? That's 100 years ago. 100 years ago, and Martin Luther King calls it 50 years ago. So now we can figure out, okay, well, if 100 years ago is 50 ago, then we can kind of solve that to figure out what a score was. Okay, so that one's worked out for us. Let's try one on our own. So an airplane descends in altitude from 20,000 feet to 10,000 feet. A gauge at radar traffic control reads that the airplane altitude drops 1.8939 miles. How many feet are in a mile? Now, the very important thing to recognize here is that it's telling us the same information, but in two different ways. So remember, imagine I'm going to draw kind of like just a height chart here. So the plane was at 20,000 feet, right? We'll call this 0, whatever. The plane, like the ground, the plane descends from 20,000 to 10,000 feet. So it descends to this level. So the plane drops this in altitude. Okay. Now it's telling us that that altitude drop is 1.8939 miles. It's saying that this altitude drop is 1.8939 miles. Okay. So now we have two things of information. We have the feet and we have the miles. So we have to do a little bit of math here. We already know that that distance is 1.8939 miles, but how many feet is it actually dropping? If it goes from 20,000 feet to 10,000 feet, what is that distance in feet that it drops? Well, if you have 20,000 and you take away the 10,000 feet that you're dropping, you can see that, hey, that distance is 10,000 feet. So what we're saying is that this 10,000 foot descent is the same thing as the 1.8939 mile descent. It's the same information, just given to us in two different ways. It gives us the information, it descended it in feet, it tells us its descent in feet, and then it tells us the descent in miles. So these are the same thing. 1.8939 miles is the 10,000 feet. They're both the exact same distance. So now we have to just solve this equation. So we have 1.8939 miles being the same distance as 10,000 feet. So to figure out how many feet are in that mile, right, to solve for this m, we have to, because remember, what this is saying is it's 1.8939 times m. That's what's happening right over here. Remember, opposites, opposites, opposites. To undo multiplying by 1.8939m, or by 1.8939, we have to divide by 1.8939. It's a weird looking decimal, but multiplying it and then dividing by it will cancel each other out, so you just have m equals. But don't forget, if you did it to the left side, you have to do it to the right side, so we have to divide this side by 1.8939 as well. Remember, we're not dividing by the m. We're not taking the m with us. It's just the number because we want the number to disappear. We want to keep this m alone. We don't want to touch that m. We want to leave it alone. So we have m, and then let's use our calculator to determine what this is. So typing that in the calculator, 10,000 divided by 1.8939 is about, so we're going to use a little squiggly equals, approximation. We have about 5,280.1 feet for our m. Okay, so we'll fill in these boxes here. This is the same thing that I just wrote on the margin, but I'm going to go ahead and fill it in here as well. All right. So let's talk about 5 and 6, and that'll be it for this video. So these are not very easy word problems. These are definitely some of the more advanced or tricky ones. So if you have the confidence to be able to do these problems, then you are looking really, really, really good. But just keep in mind, it is a challenge, and we might not be at this level yet, but we'll get there. We'll get there, and it'll be fine. So let's read this equation in number 5. An ostrich that is 108 inches tall is 20 inches taller than 4 times the height of a kiwi. What is the height of a kiwi in inches? Okay. So let's pay attention to the two things we're comparing here. We're comparing the ostrich with the kiwi. Okay. Now, one of these things we already know the height of, right? We already know that the ostrich is 108 inches tall. Okay, the ostrich is 108 inches tall. We know that. Another fun thing to pay attention to here is the word is. Is more likely than not our equal sign in the equation. When you see the word is, think that's where your equal sign goes. So when I'm seeing this right now, when I'm reading the word problem, I see that 108 is, so meaning that's 108 equals. So that's another way that I know that this equation is so far 108 equals. Now equals 20 inches taller than 4 times the height of the kiwi. I do not know what the height of the kiwi is, so I'm going to call that K. But the 20 inches taller than is like saying 20 inches more than. So when you see words like that, not mar, when you see words like more than, you have to think that that's addition, okay? You know, taller than means the same thing as more than. For example, if I said that I was 20 inches taller than my brother, then you would have to take my brother's height and add 20 to it, right? Let me say that again. If I told you that I was 20 inches taller than my brother, you would have to take my brother's height and add 20 to it to be at my level, right? So that's what we have to do with this kiwi. We have to add 20 to it. But remember, it's not just the 20. We have 20 inches taller than, but 4 times the height of the kiwi. So that's very straightforward. It tells us 4 times that height of the kiwi. So we're going to have to multiply that kiwi by 4. And there's your equation. We have 108 equals 4 times 4 times k plus 20. So now we would just go through this process of solving it. Remember the PEMDAS operation, going backwards and doing opposites, opposites, opposites. So you would start by subtracting 20. We would have, obviously, the plus 20 and the minus 20 would then cancel. So that leaves us on the left side, 108 minus 20 is 88. And on the right side, since the 20 is gone, we just have 4k. And now, since it's 4 times k, remember opposites, 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 we have to divide by the 4. The opposite of multiplying by 4 is dividing by 4. So that will cancel out. We'll have k equal to 88 divided by 4 is 22. K is equal to 22. All right. So let's look at number 6. It's very similar to that problem. So if you want to pause and try it on your own, I encourage you to do that if you haven't yet tried it on your own. But yeah, I'll go ahead and start it. So if you've done it, that's good. Now let's check our work. So an emu that measures 60 inches in height is, so remember, this is an emu that measures 60 inches in height is, that's our key word. So this is saying we have the emu's height, which is 60, is equal. That's how that equation, that's how you can translate these words into the equation. It's saying that 60 equals 60 inches in height is. That is word is very important. Is means equal. So we're looking at the emu's height, which we know the emu's height, and we're going to compare it with the kakapopo, okay? I don't know what that is, by the way. But anyway. So let's continue reading. Is 70 inches less than 5 times. So 70 inches less than 5 times the height of the kakapopo. Okay, so we don't know what the height of that is, so we just call it k, but less than tends to mean subtraction, right? Just like more than mean plus, less than means minus. So we're going to have to take our height here, subtract the 20, or subtract the 70, because it's 70 inches less than. So 70 inches less than is that minus 70 part right there. And then less than 5 times, 70 inches less than 5 times the height of the kakapopo. Okay, so we're going to have to take that height and multiply it by 5. 5 times that height. And there's our translation. So now you've got your equation. Now you can solve your equation. You can start by doing the opposites, remember? Opposites, opposites, opposites. Minus 70 plus 70 cancel out. So we would have, well, 60 plus 70 is 130. And 5 times k. So now you would divide by 5, because remember, opposites, opposites, opposites. 130 divided by 5 is 26, I believe. 26 is equal to k. All right. That's it for this video, folks. That is section 1.1. It's a challenge. It certainly is a challenge, but it's one that we are learning and we're going to get through. So there was the homework. Hopefully you've already done that. The homework, if you're new here, the homework is up at the top here. There you go. Those were your homework pages. So make sure you got those done. And I will see you in the next section. Later.